Hi.
Hey, good to see you, John. All right. Hi, everyone. Hope you're having a good time so far. It's great to see you again, and it's great to see people in person that we've met online, and it's good to meet also new people. Yeah, as Nadim mentioned, I lead the sales and partnerships at Wafeq, and it's a great pleasure to have with me today John, the MD of Taxready. John, we go back a few years.
We do, yep.
It's always good to see you. Tell us more about you, about Taxready, about Virtuzone.
Yeah, sure. So, look, I'm from New Zealand originally, as you'll probably figure out quite quickly from the accent. So, yeah, Taxready, as Maha mentioned, it's basically the tax and accounting arm of Virtuzone. So, I moved to Dubai with KPMG for my sins, and the journey was more, and we'll sort of go into this, but following the corporate tax announcement, we realised there was a very big opportunity, and so moved across to Virtuzone to launch this this whole offering, and it's where we are 3 years later.
Amazing. For those who don't know, Taxready is John's baby. Has already 2, and the third one coming up, and this is the
two human babies.
2 human babies, yes.
A Taxready baby and a third human baby arriving any day now. My phone is on loud if it rings.
Yeah, and for the same reason that you moved and you started this business. For those who don't know, Nadim started Wafeq when VAT was introduced in the UAE and KSA, and so for the same reasons.
Yeah.
For when you started Taxready, what was your idea? What was the vision behind that? And
so I mean, I knew the Virtuzone guys sort of incidentally. As I said, I was with KPMG. I was with a law firm. We saw the corporate tax announcement came out. Start of 2022, whenever it was, and sort of had a hypothesis at the time that there were a huge number of tiny little companies that had never had to do any kind of accounting or anything like that, and this was going to be the first time that all of these companies had to actually do something. A bit different to VAT, VAT only certain thresholds, certain types, and this was going to be the big one. So I sort of got into the ears of the Virtuzone guys over the course of about 6 months until they couldn't ignore me anymore, and then they brought me on board. I probably made it sound more like a certainty rather than a hypothesis that it was going to take off, but we learned very quickly that that was a good idea, and that it was we were proved right pretty quickly. Yeah.
Amazing. And from this was business incubation, like a startup. You saw the need. There was. How did you establish product market fit, if we can say? And did you go full blown, or you started testing and then?
I'd like to say there was some kind of theory, some kind of structured theory around it, but the reality is, we were sort of operating in the dark. We knew that in other countries, that segment, the service providers that service that segment, that micro and small business segment, are already well established. The industry is very fractured across thousands of small firms. So our idea was go after all of that segment before it gets a chance to spread out across multiple firms and just try capture as much as possible. So, we came out really sort of guns blazing into 2023 with huge advertising campaigns, doing 10,000 companies tax ready for free. Not all of them converted to paying clients, but a huge portion did. So, a lot of these things at the start really sort of set the tone. It probably wasn't until I'd been in the business a couple of months, and we started doing sort of free consultations and stuff, and I sat down with a couple of clients, and probably the first 3 or 4 clients that I spoke to, I'd start with saying, your taxable sort of position depends on your financial year, and they'd always interrupt and go, what's a financial year? And that's, after the third time that happened, I thought, it was like that light bulb moment of, all right, the level that we're servicing here is really, really basic, and this is where we're going to really excel. And it's still the case, probably 50% of our clients have zero accounting knowledge. They don't want to have any accounting knowledge, and they just throw it at us and just, get it done and do nothing. Yeah.
Amazing. I was going to go after this, the education, right? Like when you sell any product, any services, if the client is not receptive or is not knowledgeable, then they wouldn't appreciate what that service or that product really does for them. So how has it been?
Yeah, it's a hard one because tax is always an unpleasant thing to sell because no one wants to do it. It's you sort of drag them kicking and screaming into compliance. And we, a lot of our marketing and a lot of our development is around that fact. So we know people don't want to be involved in it. They know they're reluctant to even have to worry about it. So we're trying to educate them to say, yes, it's a big bad evil thing, but at the same time, you don't need to worry about it if you just throw it over to us. So it's a hard line to walk, but I think we do that quite well in terms of our position as a stress-free alternative. Try and keep it pretty cheap as well. I think where we come up against difficulty is where clients are just so angry that they have to do anything at all. They're like, oh, the UAE was sold to me as a tax-free thing, and now you're telling me I have to do it, and it's a lot of shoot the messenger kind of thing. So we have to really. That's where it gets really quite difficult. But that's where we need to really step in and educate. And a lot of it comes down to credibility as well. So at the start, people didn't really trust Virtuzone telling them the tax rules. That's probably moved along a bit now. We've got a lot of free zone partnerships on board as well, and people are a lot more receptive to this information if it's actually coming from the free zone, from a position of, an organisation of authority. So we utilise that a lot.
Amazing. That was going to my next question, which you kind of answered it, but it's no easy or no small feat that you've reached 10,000 clients in less than 2 years or something like that.
Yeah.
And so what were the enablers? So tax zones is one.
Yeah. So we were really focused on the segment to start with. So like I said, if someone comes. The general rule for us is that if a company has an accountant, they're probably too big for us, right? Yes, we still will do tax filing for those clients, but they're not interested in annual bookkeeping or anything like that, right? So if they've got the revenue and the size to be paying an accountant, they probably don't need someone to just throw everything at and carry on. So we knew our segment. We went after it very, very hard, especially early on, and then it sort of snowballed from there. Obviously, Virtuzone sitting on a couple of thousand clients from the start was our perfect, launch pad. We had thousands of clients as fuel to that fire to start, and that really got us going. And once something like that really takes off, and the word gets out that you're sort of that cheap, I don't want to say cheap, but economic and efficient option that you can just throw things at and it'll get done and you don't have to worry. That's what really snowballed. It really took off quite early, and it's just it's been growing ever since.
And from a technology perspective, I mean, obviously things are not manual. We've heard it earlier. Was Ayman and AI and software. So just like how much Wafeq helped out in this process?
Yeah, I mean, for us, I mean, the whole story around the accounting provider that we went with is a little bit disappointing as a New Zealander, because we were originally on Xero. You know, our first few clients, they were the big name. We had conversations with them, and it became quite clear quite early on that they didn't really see the opportunity in the market that we did. Yes, they weren't quite as flexible, right? As you know, you guys, as we then found out, you would be. But really, it was the start where they just didn't seem to acknowledge that the UAE, you know, our idea of this segment was going to be huge. That put a really bad taste in our mouth, and that's why we started looking around. And then, you know, it was purely by chance that a friend of mine knew Nadeem through some of the early equity stuff, and put us in touch. And you know, the ability to partner with someone local who we could really work with and go on that journey, and really saw that opportunity with us has proved invaluable. You know, as you know, because I annoy you guys constantly, we rely so heavily on, you know, when we're talking about onboarding hundreds, if not 1,000 clients a month, right? We need something seamless. We need the customer to have a seamless experience. Quite often, this is their first experience with accounting or anything, and so it needs to be, you know, it needs to be stress-free. We've sold this as a stress-free service, and so every touch point needs to reflect that, and that's why Wafeq's been so good. You know, it enables us to continue our service aspect in that way.
Thank you, John. It's really no annoyance at all. on the contrary, we are very grateful to be your partners, and very honored also to be that. And as you know, and as maybe the audience here, we're very eager to any feedback, and we love more like the negative feedback, meaning in the things that we could improve, more than the positive feedback and the kind of in the allergy type. So we're always looking for feedback to keep on improving, making the product better, and the service as well. Yes, true, we have a local presence that's kind of a differentiator with the other big players. And I think also, I've probably heard it from you before, from a tech stack or from a product perspective, I believe your accounting team is more efficient on Wafeq than, let's say, with Xero, right?
Yeah. I mean, we do a lot of automation in-house as well. And so for us, it's just so important to be able to, you know, most recently, you know, we're obviously going through tax filing now, and being able to tweak some of those features so that it fits into our automation is you know, very, very important for us. We would never get that if we were with, you know, my fellow countrymen in Xero. It pains me to say it, but yeah, it's we just wouldn't get that.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And you know, we mentioned automating. I also knew Anna for many years.
Yeah.
Anna is the director of technology at Virtuzone.
Yep.
And yeah, this is where we kind of differentiate ourselves in the Wafeq APIs, which would make it for large businesses like you to automate on behalf of other clients, or sometimes, yeah, we're focusing on SMEs, but there could be some larger clients that we could serve, and they might need those APIs to automate or to process larger volumes of. They could be bills, they could be invoices. It could also be data exported. So we have a kind of one of a large client. They are in like 8 or 9 countries. So we have our reports, but they want to do even more customized reports, so they export it to a data lake. So this is like, I believe this is where we're helping out on that APIs thing and easiness to bring data in or out of Wafeq.
Yeah, just make sure you don't lose that when you guys get massive, right? Because I don't want to be on a stage, 2 years, 3 years from now saying Wafeq got too big, they got too much like zero, and they started ignoring. I know you won't, but
No. You'll always be a big voice here, and we'll always keep. So, like with you, we have to enhance our communication. We have an amazing on top of the customer support team that Dima's heading, but we also, with our accounting firms, large partners, large clients, we have a dedicated Slack, Teams, Google Spaces channels to constantly be aware of anything we can improve or any questions that we can tackle. And we have here the audience, so we'll have you in next year and or the one after, and you'll tell us again.
Yep.
Amazing. So with that corporate tax, that's kind of like new, right? It will be implemented in September this year. How have you seen like the SMEs behavior, to be compliant? What have they changed in their processes?
Yeah, look, it's a tough one because I think it really comes down to most of the clients that we deal with are individuals really, 1 person, 2 person, 3 person companies, and so much of it just comes down to the attitude or the mentality of 1 person. Right, and there might be 1 owner with 10 employees, let's say. Now, I would say that it really comes down to the people that were already organised, already know, take the business quite seriously, right? They, as long as they could acknowledge that there is something that they had to do and went seeking what that was, they're absolutely fine. The people that we've seen really sort of get into trouble with, the dreaded late registration fine of 10,000 dirham, right? They're the ones that really sort of dug their heels in. They would say to us, oh no, if there's no way the UAE's actually going to implement this, and then, oh, the fine came in, but can you get it waived over Ramadan? All of this kind of stuff. It's just a real mentality that I just don't think works with a modern tax regime. And I think that's where we've seen the big disconnect. And that's I think there are always going to be clients who, their mentality is it's someone else's compliance is someone else's problem, right? And we try and educate them. We try and say, look, we can do this up to a point, but the only person that can run your business is you, right? And it's very hard to educate people if they're really set in that other mentality. So, it's not a very nice answer. I'd like to say, oh, we've seen people, being much more, adaptive and stuff. But I think the reality is that when you're dealing in the segment that we are, it just comes down to personalities. And I think unfortunately, I think there are personalities that are always going to see compliance as a hindrance and, not their problem. And they just get really annoyed if they get a fine or something like that, and they see it as not their fault. So, bit of a depressing answer, but I just think we can do as much as we can to educate and try and get them on board. I think the FTA's done a pretty good job of that. They've certainly tried. You see Chris Fade doing reels for educating people. I think if people aren't on board already with the new environment of compliance here in the UAE, then I don't know what else can be done to really get them, get them on board. And I think we're already seeing, we've probably got 10 or 15 clients a month who are just shutting down their business, saying, no, it's not worth it in the UAE anymore because of 9% corporate tax that they're not even going to have to pay because they're, under the small business relief threshold or something. But they're just kicking off and leaving, which is crazy to think that, you know, you're giving this up because of a 9% potential corporate tax. But yeah, it's unfortunate, but I just think it really comes down to the mentality of these people. Yeah,
I mean, with any change, it takes some time for people to accept it.
Yeah,
but you know, like for you and for us, the regulation is a big tailwind, right? That's how we started Wafeq, and I believe the same. And like Hamilton, I think, used to say, two things are sure in life: death and taxes.
Death and taxes. Yep.
Yeah. One more thing regarding the SMEs. I know, like you mentioned, you're handling the very small ones that come after business setup mainly, which is a big funnel.
Yep.
But what are any compliance mistakes or main compliance mistakes that you see them doing? I know you're advising them well, but there's still people could go rogue, or, you know.
Yeah. Look, not really. And like I say, the ones that the vast majority of our clients and I'd say business owners in the UAE do have that right mentality. They know that they've got to go through these compliance steps, right? I don't think, you know, we shouldn't kid ourselves. Like, the UAE corporate tax is actually very simple, especially at that end of town. I mean, you know, our whole model was really built around small business relief. You know, we heard rumours of that it was going to be 5 million and 1 million, and then it came out at 3 million, and we knew that, okay, that was our operating model, right? So for a huge number of our clients, compliance is the only thing they really have to do. They don't need to worry about any sort of tax computation or anything like that. They just need to know the deadlines. They need us to hit them. They need us to get things filed correctly, and that's it. So the idea that this compliant, you know, corporate tax is a huge compliance burden for our segment, it's not really. You know, it's some additional cost, but it's not like they're going to pay, you know, off to a big four and pay 80,000 dirham for a tax filing, right? Like, it's, you know, it's a fraction of that, and it's just a case of ticking the boxes or getting someone else to tick the boxes for them. And again, I honestly think it just comes down to that mentality. You know, the people that want to stick their head in the sand, and, you know, we'll get these clients that come in and they've got the 10,000 dirham late registration fine, and then we find out that they never registered for VAT, even though they've been, you know, operating for 2.5 years and over the threshold. You know, I would say that most businesses in the UAE are now, you know, on board with this. They realise, and it's quite often it's a bit of a surprise to them when we say to them, look, your revenue's 2 million dirhams, you're under this threshold, you don't actually have to pay, we'll go file your tax return for you and see you next year, sort of thing. So I don't think it's a huge burden compared to the rest of the world. I think businesses are coming along pretty well. Again, just down to that mentality thing. I think people, you know, they're in two buckets. They're on board with it, or they're not, and they're just going to keep on accruing these fines.
And also, from your experience, you know, that mentality, is it for? I mean, I moved to the UAE, like I've been calling it home for 11 years. Do you see a difference in mentality between, like, businesses who are just sprung up, or those who have been there here for a while, or
No, not really. And that's surprising, because I thought that, you know, people who had been here for a long time would sort of be, but I think it's, I can't explain it, and it's not a hugely informative answer. It's just, you know, I think there are just business owners who refuse to acknowledge that there are certain rules that you need to play by if you're you know, existing in this environment, and there are others that just accept that it's, you know, tax is a reality and compliance is a reality, and you've got to abide by it. Otherwise, you're going to fall behind.
Yeah, definitely. Moving ahead, what is next for Taxready?
So obviously so in terms of the regulatory outlook, I mean, obviously September filing is huge. You know, big campaigns launching around that. we still think we've got, we're at, we hit that 10,000 client benchmark a little while ago. Where now we want to get to a multiple of that by September. I think, look, I think 2027 when small business relief rolls off, that's going to be a next kind of movement for our operating model, and that's what we're really looking out to. I think I'm a bit of an AI skeptic, and not around the technology. I've just had too many people come in and say, this is going to solve your problems, and they're giving me they're explaining problems that I don't actually see. Like we don't, for our business, we don't really need something that does a massive bank reconciliation, or something like that. Our clients are tiny, right? And so for us, in terms of really refining our model, it's about the ability to better segment our clients. When we're talking about tens of thousands of clients, we need to put them into buckets before we can automate, right? So small business relief is a great example, right? If your revenue's under 3 million and you don't hit you don't meet a qualifying free zone exemption, then bang, you're off into the automation for small business relief. All of the reg tech is done and you're away. I think what we really need, and sorry, I'm kind of digressing a little bit, but when you say what's next for us, I say what's next from a technology thing or sort of an AI flavor of the month. But and maybe this is a challenge for Ayman and was it Rayan? So I think the big thing that could be solved is, so if you look at e-invoicing, right? So e-invoicing should give us the information around location of client and maybe activities of client if they're in the UAE, right? So that would help solve probably 80% of the question around does a business qualify for the free zone exemption. But if we can somehow roll that out so that we can almost automate the advice or automatically segment a business for their offshore invoices, saying, the designated, getting a bit technical here, but the designated zone exemption, like if we could somehow say, all right, invoices went to this company overseas, we know that that's an additional distributor of goods. If that could somehow be automated and we could segment, companies out into the free zone exemption that way, that would be a huge game changer for us, right? Because that all of a sudden pulls out a huge manual assessment process that we currently have to do. And we could just roll automation across some small business relief into the free zone exemption as well. And we're talking about thousands of clients for us that would save us months of man hours. So if you guys could just solve that for me and then let me know, and then that'd be great.
Nadim is smiling there. So any.
It's impossible. I don't say it lightly. Like I've sat there and looked at it and just thought, this is what I need. And if someone, I talk about people coming into our into our offices and saying, we can do this. We can do the data. We can do the journals via AI. I'm sort of like, oh, that's great. Can you do this? And they're just sort of like, nope. Like, yeah, it's kind of what I need. Yeah.
Amazing. And. It's an amazing conversation. We're close to the end. How can Wafeq help here, and how do you see the part in terms of partnership products?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously e-invoicing is a huge topic. I think you will be one of our sort of conduits into the FTA. Obviously, we speak to the FTA very, very regularly. We advocate for that micro end of town in terms of issues that don't get as much knowledge or as much attention as the top end of town. But when it comes to e-invoicing, I think we'll be relying on you to be helping us with those communications to the FTA, saying these are the issues that our little clients are seeing. How can we adapt the e-invoicing rollout to make sure that it aligns? And we'll be doing that. We'll hopefully be doing that in you know, alongside you guys, because you're the technology side of implementation of that. Just don't change. And I mean that. I mean change technology, but just, you know, the support is what we need. You know, again, we sell this as a stress-free, fast, efficient. You know, if you don't hear from us, it's good kind of thing. And yeah, we need that. We need that support from you guys going forward as well.
It's really our pleasure, and excuse me. We're always looking forward to any feedback, any questions. We'll always be there. We're not going to block you off our WhatsApp or channels, no. Really, we really appreciate it, and thanks again for coming out here today.
No, thanks for having me.
For being our partners, one of our closest and largest partner. Always looking forward to hearing your feedback.
Thanks.
Before we close, I know we're running out of time. Any other words you'd like to share with the audience, or?
No. Look, I mean, you know, it's a very exciting time, and almost like it's almost contradictory to say that's an exciting time in the tax and accounting industry. I don't think, you know, globally, I don't think you'll get anywhere else in the world where a developed country, you know, a highly developed country is rolling out something like this. So, you know, it's a bit of a gold rush moment for the industry at the moment, and you know, hopefully we're all enjoying it as much as we can, being accountants. Yeah.
Yeah, we are, and we look forward to that.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks again, John.
No worries, mate.
Really. Let's take a selfie. I like
okay. Like selfies. I asked Nadeem for a photo before he ignored my message. So.
Who?
Nadeem.
Nadeem, come on.
Marketing have instructed me to get a selfie as well.